Okay, hi everybody. I thought I'd start by, in a way, the question about whether fresh new innovation. What struck me is about this idea that freshness and innovation are often seen as one and the same thing. And really, what I wanted to do is slightly deconstruct this idea and look at the idea that it's actually, for me anyway, it's freshness that I'm looking for, perhaps over innovation. If you think about it, you take an orange. In a way, uh, every orange is the same, and every time you have a fresh orange, it will be the same as the fresh that we will experience when we eat that another fresh orange the following day. The point about it is its freshness is a quality rather than difference. Whereas I think with innovation, often what it's about is basically adding functionality. Obviously, we hope that it will increase in efficiency, and that's obviously something we should always look out for. But very often, it's really more to do with adding functionality. It can be to do with fashion, and not really affecting the central idea that we're trying to do. So in a way, if you take a mobile phone, it's not changing the way we use it as a phone in terms of how we chat. And the problem with that can be that for within all kind of technologies, but particularly in the language classroom, the innovation of today can end up being a little bit not the innovation of tomorrow. And what we find is a certain amount of it can effectively be a bit of a waste that is generated by this. So, what I'd like to think of is think about those. What makes a fresh class? What are those things which basically those lessons which are always the same, but somehow each time create a new freshness, a new enjoyment in class. They always involve the students. They always bring some kind of learning, and one hopes a certain amount of joy. One of my favourites, you probably know these. I mean, you probably have these favourite classes yourselves. Is one called Scar Stories. It's from a book called Vocabulary by John Morgan and Mario Involucri. And basically, the idea of it is you go in, you show a scar, which in my case is something akin to this. It's not a terribly dramatic one, but it's there. You tell the story of how you got this scar. As you're telling the story, you write up the words on the board. Or language which helps you tell it. Then you ask another student to say it. It's usually one of the better students, or somebody who's willing to tell them their story. You help them tell their story, and as you're doing so, add some more language on the board, which then becomes available for other students to ask. And then you might ask one more student, again, same process, and then eventually you put students in pairs to exchange their stories. And as you're going round, you can listen, correct some of the language, again, add some new language onto the board, which students are finding useful. You might stop the chat at one point, go through some of that language, then again, redo again the same story in a way. It's this idea that you are recreating it. There's a freshness in it, in that you're getting new language and you're having a new partner, but it's essentially the same thing. And I've always found this has been a brilliant class. You can do it with other topics. It doesn't always have to be scar stories, but it creates a kind of freshness each time. And what I wanted to think about is what makes that freshness. And for me, it's because it's personal and social. It's a genuine communication. And very importantly, it uses students' language and their attempts to communicate to teach them new language, obviously with the help of the teacher. The teacher's feeding in this kind of thing. And central to that idea is essentially a rather old-fashioned one, which is chat. This is what drives so much of our conversation, so much of our lives. And it's often the same things we talk about each time, but they take on a new freshness each time. Okay, not always, but very often, because they lead to different areas, lead to different conversations. There are new things coming up. So taking this idea, here's another example of that idea of freshness. I've often given this as an idea that we have these moments of chat around the class, and we often want to kind of we often dismiss this part of the lesson as simply something that we do as a kind of temporary moment. However, when I ask teachers, what can you teach through these questions, very often teachers will just simply say it's past simple, for example, or hobbies, things you do at the weekend. But actually, if you think about how the conversation can continue and how we can aid that conversation, then many other areas can come up. So if you just take these ideas, I went shopping. Obviously, we might then ask, did you get anything nice? Was it worth it? Where did you get them? Is it what you were wearing now? Oh, yeah, it looks really nice on you. I went to see my grand sister. Oh, really? Where do they live? How old are they? What do they do? Was in bed all weekend. Oh no, what happened? Oh dear, it's terrible. I had a similar thing, flu earlier this week, and it was, and you get a whole kind of areas of language which develop out of this single moment of chat. The words are leading, and it's the conversation which is driving the new areas of language. We can, I think, in terms of innovation, sometimes we can see these type of ideas, and what happens is that we perhaps have a blog post, or we get students to Facebook on these topics, but we often will get stuck in the same past simple. I went to shopping on Sunday morning. I went to church after that. In the evening, I went to the cinema, and it gets reduced to quite a limited kind of thing, even though we're exploring a different piece of technology. What we want to be doing is taking that further with the help of the teacher. Another way of thinking about that is that we can take, for me, it's the words which always drive conversation, drive chat, rather than grammar. So this is an example. Unfortunately, these kind of things are often not what publishers like. They often remove these kind of conversations about bits of vocabulary unless they're very, very centered on either the grammar or on a particular topic. But for me, imagine, okay, these are random words which perhaps had come up in a text. For me, these would be interesting questions to explore. And each of the words lead into a different area, fresh area of stories and chat and interest. That doesn't work so often when you're starting with an idea of grammar, and that the grammar has to be embedded and central to the conversation. For me, what happens is we start with the words, we have the chat. In a similar way to the STAR stories, we notice areas of difficulty with the students, areas of grammar which they're failing with, and then we might deal with that as part of a kind of feedback loop, if you like, and then they can maybe again repeat some of the same conversations with a new partner. To do that, I think what you need to understand is that to extract the juice, to find that freshness, we need to be prepared more to follow our students rather than worry about losing control. And I think that's sometimes why conversation speaking practice of the type we've just seen is often resisted, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. The teachers have to take part. They are part of the conversation, but at the same time, they have to act as sorry, that's my thing. I'm out of time. Act as teachers within that. They need to seek the natural rather than the processed, and then seek to enable rather than stick to this strict syllabus. And for me, that is central to being fresh as opposed to purely innovative. Thank you very much.